So usually they have achieved some kind of high growth. They are focused on really being the face and want to be the face. They don't want to do the inner workings anymore. But they're also not workaholics, to be honest. I mean, God bless you, workaholics, but I like working with people who want something outside of work. So that to me is actually really important because my mission is all about quality of life. And I'm so sorry, but a lot of workaholics don't really care about that.
Welcome to It's Marketing's Fault, the podcast where we discuss how to do marketing the right way. I'm your host, Eric Rutherford, and I'm excited today because I have with me Sonja Narvaez. She is the founder of Operation Qol and Chief Ops Optimizer for hungry six-figure and maxed out seven-figure visionaries of service-based companies. She's also the host of the Talk Nerdy to Me podcast, which has to be one of the best podcast titles ever, hands down. Sonja, welcome to the show.
Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been excited for this conversation. I was looking forward to going deep into ops, which is one of those so necessary and often, maligned. I think it's just sometimes it just gets this unsexy label in companies, but man, it doesn't work without ops.
Absolutely not. I like to think of it as sometimes brushing your teeth isn't always the funnest, most amazing thing to do, but I don't know if you've had some really fun toothbrushes, some glow in the dark, like the toothpaste, there's so many ways to pizzazz it in your, for you that it works out really well.
I like that idea. It's like it can be fun, it can be exciting, it can be engaging. It doesn't just have to be boring.
Yes. No, not at all.
Oh, I love it. So let me just start off with, because I think at heart, most companies understand they need systems, but what keeps companies, what keeps companies from implementing the systems they most need?
A lot of times I find that companies run by CEOs that are incredibly visionary have a lot of trouble, thinking through what are those exact systems we're going to need at what times. And then in addition, what things do we pull in order to add that structure? So I think one thing that people believe is that operations is, have a scheduler, I'm better, I'm good in operations right now, or I have a VA, they do all the operation. People kind of believe that they're already sort of operationally adding systems and structure throughout as they grow and learn, but they also are wary of adding too much rigidity. They're afraid of adding too much bureaucracy, right? Because a lot of people come from corporate and they're like, no. I remember having to follow those processes or having to write those checklists or having those performance reviews or having that 9 to 5 schedule. Systems are not about, creating. I like to think of it actually as when you're thinking about systems, they're not necessarily the roads and the line in the middle. What are they, the pathways? They're actually the guardrails that are keeping you from jumping over, falling off that cliff. So what we create inside of that is different, but we still need those guardrails or else we'll fall off the cliff. And I don't know if you've ever driven on a mountain that does not have guardrails, but let me tell you, I have been on a bus in the mountains of Costa Rica and I was pulling out my rosary beads that my grandma gave me.
No, it's funny because I do know what it's like, maybe not on the mountains, but at least here in Tennessee, I've driven on some roads around some of the hills and there's some deep ditches or, wow, I'll lose my car if I fall off. There's no coming back if I fall off. Yeah. So I get it. And I really like that description that it's not that the operational systems are not like the line you have to stand on and keep following. It's the guardrails, because I have been in those big corporate enterprise companies. I have railed against some of the systems in place that took me more time to maintain the system than to do the work. And I'm like, just get out of my way. Let me do my thing. So I get it. I totally get it. I still feel like I've got a little bit of PTSD from some of the stuff, what you just shared is a very different perspective than what I have often encountered or I have often felt. Is that something where you're like, when you talk with people, it sounds then like it's a little bit of an educational process too, of like systems are your friends.
Yeah, I mean, it really is actually, because just like I'm sure in marketing, there's different levels in operations and there's different pieces that people don't necessarily understand. And so while operations itself is literally in the dictionary defined as anything and everything that moves the business forward, the like ambiguity of that, leaves a lot of room for interpretation. So each person that is in operations usually has their focus and how they do things. But in like most of us, we all have those different perspectives. And the way I look at it is, well, that way, because I'm a bit of a rebel. Like, I don't want you to put me in a box. I don't want to have to do something specifically every time the same way. And that's what I really love about the guardrails is here's the things that we need to stay within, but like we get to play and have a lot of creativity, like inside of those containers.
That's huge. That really is. Yeah, I hit my button. We're wanting to make you feel comfortable here. Like we're just humans here, and we are not slick by any means or standard. Oh, so tell me about Operation Qol. So what is it?
So at Operation Qol, we work with business owners to help them design, build, and implement their systems and structure so that they can amplify their impact without sacrificing their quality of life. So my background is actually in healthcare. And I used to work in federally qualified health centers. I used to work in like the streets of Chicago in terms like in the health hospitals. And it was really, really difficult to work with people directly sick that were sick all the time. And, it's a very, not going to go down that road of the healthcare system, but it is a revolving door. And so, you don't necessarily see people getting better. You see them either maintaining or getting worse. And so it was very, very difficult mentally, emotionally for me to continue doing that. And what I realized was while I love healthcare and I love everything that we have the potential to do, I am much better actually running things and solving problems than I am trying to keep up this status quo of happening. So I created Operation Qol to kind of focus on my core mission and life's mission, which is to improve and help people achieve a better quality of life in the manner or way that they want to do it. So quality of life to me is very much encompassing of everything. It's not just let's have all this money, right? A lot of people focus on revenue, they focus on profit, they focus on views, they focus on clicks. What a lot of entrepreneurs forget is that we lose our quality of life when we're trying to build businesses around the way that other people think we should build them.
That's really powerful, because I think most entrepreneurs, whether they're doing like a solo business, whether they're like trying to build a company from scratch and, build it to whatever size, I think that is the trap. Like we think I have to achieve, I gotta become Amazon. And it's like, that I don't want to be Jeff Bezos.
Oh no.
Or Elon Musk. Like
I want to stay there. Like I'm fine. I want to keep
like I like having a little bit of life outside of work.
I love having life outside of work.
Yeah, I know. But I appreciate you're like, wow, let's really evaluate what that looks like, and let's do something to make that happen. So what kind of customers do you work with? I know I did in the intro like those 6-figure, 7-figure, but kind of give us a little more detail on that.
Absolutely. So honestly, a lot of times my customers are experts, true experts. So they have some kind of niche in some way, shape, or form. So for example, they have a specific target market. They have specific skills that, are focused, such as, for example, I actually help clients such as high performance coaches that work with athletes specifically, or that work, with other types of smaller, like educational companies that are focused on educating and tutoring, and they focus on these two things, and that's really it. And so there is something about the visionary that they themselves are an expert in a specific field. And I say that because it's, a lot of people are like, well, that's me, right? Like I'm an expert in this field, but really a lot of people are actually more general than they, think. And we need generalists. Okay. Like I have a colleague, and she's amazing. She considers herself a generalist, and the work that she does is important. And I have seen her help entrepreneurs grow to that, $3, $4, $5 million phase. So it's very important, but you also need people who are experts in specific things. Like no matter what, I like to call them nerds, right? This is their love language. This is what they focus on. And, they're going to be able to see things in that way through that lens. So for example, not to knock any professions or anything, but what I do see a lot is that people will kind of straddle two different fields. So they may be, oh, I'm operations, but I'm also a CFO. So most of the time, they're really looking at operations through a financial lens. And operations isn't just a financial lens, right? It's all encompassing in the business. It is habits, behaviors, team, planning, dumpster fires, everything and anything. So my customers tend to be very, very focused. And they also are either very hungry or they're very maxed out in terms of capacity of what's going on. So usually they have achieved some kind of high growth. They are focused on really being the face and want to be the face. They don't want to do the inner workings anymore. But they're also not workaholics, to be honest. I mean, God bless you, workaholics, but I like working with people who want something outside of work. So that to me is actually really important, because my mission is all about quality of life. And I'm so sorry, but a lot of workaholics don't really care about that.
No, absolutely. That's huge, because and I appreciate that, because, visionary, and as I thought for a long time, I was a details person, but I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Like I paint with a really big brush, and I own that now, and I'm comfortable with that now. But sometimes it just takes that realization of, okay, that's not really my strength. Like
Absolutely.
that, and so I need help with that.
Yeah. And, the more and more people realize that, the better, and I don't want to say easier, right? Because the entrepreneurial journey will never be easy, no matter who you are. There will always be ups and downs, but you'll probably be able to maintain integrity. You'll be able to, keep your life of some kind running, but you really, really have to focus on the things that you're good at. And don't get me wrong, right? Like money is important in terms of like being able to access these people, but what else can we do? Right? There's so many different things. I know I'm part of a community where we but we have member offers, and they're just basically our way of giving back to the community. We offer people, little sessions, each of us, like of what our expertise is. And that's just like, 30 minutes of free session of very big experts. So like, there's not always an exchange of money. And with networking nowadays, the way it's going, it's all about making deeper connections. And in order to make deeper connections and for me to feel comfortable to refer you, I kind of know and understand your process and how you do things.
Yeah, because you don't want to recommend somebody and then suddenly it's a mess, or like it's just a bad experience. So yeah, I totally I totally respect that. So let me ask, just in terms of systems and operations, how can a company know if either they need to update their systems,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they just need to add a system, right? Like maybe they're just unaware of the fact that, point A doesn't really connect to point B. They just think it does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think those are two different scenarios, but how can they know that?
So I find there's kind of really two avenues that help people understand that it's kind of time for operations to kick in. Excuse me. One is time. Like you are on that hamster wheel, you're spinning, you're like, I've got proof of concept, money's coming in, but I'm exhausted and I have no time. And so if all of your team members and you, that's your culture every day, we have something going on, right? That is an operations issue because there's something going on that's not allowing your team to kind of be able to be best in their day to day, and then you best in your day to day. So really it's all about like when you have no more time and no more capacity to do anything else. And then the second thing is really, oh Lord, I just had a brain fart. What was the second thing?
Totally cool. We'll edit.
I'm like, what is the second thing?
We can come back to it. It's totally cool.
Yeah, I'm like, it was something about like, no idea. I want to say it's like, so the other thing is when you find yourself losing money, losing people, and losing your mind.
Okay.
When you just can't seem to figure out what are those, like, what's the issue? Most of the time that what people don't realize is a lot of problems end up being operational, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. We all need marketing. We all need sales. We all need leads. We all need these things. But when we have them, when it's kind of a system and it's working okay and things are coming in, but there's still something in here that's not connected, that's not working, usually it'll be an operations problem and it's time to level up your systems. And that doesn't always mean, like you said, like creating or, dismantling anything, but it could mean creating a new system. It could mean optimizing something. It could mean ensuring that your people are in the right seats. It could be, really figuring out what needs to be done and not done. So prioritizing, planning, it could be a lot of things. But I would say those two are kind of really big factors for people.
That's interesting. The idea that, when you've got proof of concept, so you know what you're doing and what you're selling works.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not trying to figure that out. But you can't do any more and everybody's burnt out. And the other end, I like that idea, the idea you're losing people because obviously something's broken because they're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, this is just dumb. Or you start losing money, which could be because your proof of concept's great, but you just can't implement the thing. Because I've been at big companies where there were just breakdowns where it was like, okay, people want this, but we can't turn you up for 6 months. And it's like, forget that then.
Yeah.
So I appreciate both sides of the coin there, because that's a real challenge. And it's not like that doesn't just happen like instantaneously. That creeps up on you.
Yes. Yeah, it creeps up on you. And it's kind of like that, so when you don't have quality, when you're running like a robot and you're not taking your quality of life into account when you're running your business, very well that at one moment or another, you're just going to drop. Like your body is going to be like, enough is enough. You're sick now because you haven't paid attention to me. You haven't given me the time and space I needed. You have not rested and recovered like you needed to. And I've asked you to a million times. Our body's going to be like, bam, down. So it's kind of like that. You kind of wake up one day and you realize, oh my God, I cannot move from this bed.
Yeah. That's it. It's one of those, you're so focused on surviving.
Yes.
That you don't realize the position you're in.
Yeah.
And then it almost seems like then it almost can feel insurmountable in terms of how do I don't even know where to begin. Like, am I going to have to just blow the whole thing up, or, so is that where you just start taking some baby steps? How does that work? Or is it like, no, we just need to figure out all the systems or lack thereof you have in place? What's that next step when you hit that?
So to be honest, I would say the first next step is to take a breath and a day off. Because one thing is, I would never want to work with somebody that is coming to me that is, so desperate in a way that, they're not making a decision out of like clarity and wanting to do this and wanting to work and wanting to change and add these things, because operations and how I work in it, it's a very intimate thing. So we're working, together. We're really working to make sure that your vision, your core values, and that your team is empowered, that everything is working together, and that we all know where we're going. So it's a commitment. And so I'd want somebody never to come to me not able to make that commitment, because it's a disservice to them and it's a disservice to me. And also, I'm an operations person. We don't really like wasting time. So let's just nip that in the bud. But I would say that that's the first step. Take a day and take a breath. And then I would say, talk to the people on your team to see what they think and what they're saying, so that you can understand, like, okay, maybe it's just me. Because I know I've had moments in my team where I'm like, I just feel like I'm not doing anything, like nothing's happening, nowhere we're going. And then I've spoken to my team and they're like, wait, you don't get these notifications? Like, you don't know that these things are done and we can close the loop? And I was like, no. So like, I keep thinking about, I'll delegate, keep thinking about things because I wasn't getting the notification, so it could be something that maybe, you guys work together. And then, if that, or if you don't have a team or if you don't know anybody, I would say talk to your trusted colleagues. And I'm like, Sonia, are we ever going to get to work with you? Is it ever a good time to work with you? But what I love is for people to really come aware. And I have no problem talking to somebody who feels like they're not sure where to go. They're not sure what's going on. And I can give them, some perspective from my operational lens. But I definitely want people to feel like they've done some due diligence. They've really made decisions from a place that they know is going to be, that they're making the decisions that they know are going to be the best for the future and long-term. Short-term solutions, as we know, don't necessarily work all the time.
No, I'm guilty and have been a part of that knee-jerk panic. I got to do something. The sky's falling kind of thing. And yeah, it doesn't.
I bought a car in the moment when I was like, I can't drive this like front wheel drive in the winter anymore. Like, I'm slipping, I'm scared. I got to go buy an SUV.
Absolutely. Like, it's like one of those moments, and it's like, whoa, I like that. Take a day off, take a breath, just kind of get some composure. It's going to be okay. We just need to walk into it with that mindset and know that it's going to take a little time. And, kind of through this conversation, I am all for systems and automation, and I appreciate automation and being able to save time, save energy, do more. My frustration in the past is when the process has become the bottleneck instead of the sort of interstate. Right? When the process becomes the problem, how can a company keep that from happening? Like, is there anything they can be on the lookout for? Is there anything they can do? I mean, we're using all of these task management systems and all of these other things, which are supposed to, in theory, make things better. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. So how do we navigate that? Does that question make sense?
It does. And actually the first thing I want to mention, or the first thing it brings me back to brushing your teeth. You're supposed to be doing it every day. And the theory is that it's going to keep us from having cavities and going to the dentist too often and getting our teeth removed. But as you know, some of those things actually still happen, and we still have to go to the dentist. We still have to get cleanings from them. We still have to do all those things. So one of the things that most people don't think about or do is look back. So during you should have quarterly, you should be having quarterly planning sessions and you should be having an annual planning session. At those checkpoints, you should be looking back as to what were learnings, what were victories, what do the numbers say, so that we can really see, okay, what's the biggest picture here and where are the biggest problems? And then that's that first layer, right? The second layer is, okay, cool. What's happening in this? What do our systems or structure look like or not look like that are, causing that issue? What I would also say is when we don't update things on a regular basis, it will become outdated and break apart. So at those, on a quarterly basis, even on a biannual basis, if you can, review each department's systems and processes. It might not be you as a CEO. You might have an operations person to help you do that. But, or just, some colleagues, some people, like you can also have like a meeting with people who are actually doing those processes and you can talk to them, engage it. But you want to always be monitoring to ensure that you are you're as optimized as you can be right now, right? There's always room for improvement, but right now, like, what is our temperature? And, it becomes more and more evident as you get into that planning, those planning phases and habits that, this is going to be a problem. This is going to be a problem. So then at that point, we can start addressing them before they even become bottlenecks.
I like that. That makes sense. Just that regular, just conversation, quarterly, annual. So that seems very reasonable for small businesses. So let's increase the scale and say, let's talk about large enterprise companies. Does it work the same way for them?
So I will caveat my response with, I primarily work with those, smaller 6-7 figure businesses, right? Like, so I haven't worked much with large clients aside from when I was in corporate. What I will say is that there is a lot more complexity as a result of the additional bureaucracy that happens in lots of companies. But I do think and, stand by like monitoring and checking in is really important. And a lot of times people don't do that on a regular basis in general. So I have colleagues, I have best friends that work in, large scale enterprise companies, and part of the bottleneck, part of the systems breaking is communication. And as you get bigger, it seems that the harder communication really becomes. And you have to, and as you're growing, you really just have to prepare for that. You have to, hire incredible people who can help you and your teams keep that cohesion of a small business, keep that camaraderie, keep the conversation flowing, keep the ideas going. So, and that's not everybody's expertise, right? That's not everybody's focus, but I think that, investing in something along those lines early as your company is growing is really important because it will affect everything else.
That makes sense. So let me kind of with that, because obviously the more people you add, the bigger your company gets, the more complexity you get. Very much what you were saying. At the same time, even with small businesses, systems within a department, even if you're a department of 3, you're still a department. But the moment you have to cross a departmental sort of boundary, that demarcation point, it seems like they just get harder. Like, how do you get buy-in? Like, how do you get buy-in when suddenly it goes outside your sphere of authority? And obviously, as you're working with CEOs, it's like, well, everything is theoretically under their authority, but they're still going to have to get buy-in from the different groups. How do you handle that? I'd love to hear.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question. You're saying that, when like a project, let's say, it includes the marketing team and the sales team. And so you're asking, how do we make sure that those people communicate? Or
Oh, great question. Yeah, I kind of muddled it as I went. I apologize.
Mm.
So let's say it could be like any system. Let's say we're trying to figure out how to handle orders better, just from a perspective of order management. So you probably have somebody, one or more people handling inbound orders. And it could be, you're going through Shopify, it could be going through any website, you could be buying a service, whatever it is. But then suddenly you've got somebody who is shipping, somebody who is marketing, somebody who is sales, somebody maybe who is handling inventory. So you have all of these pieces, and then obviously you may even have, acquisition or purchasing. So especially if you're dealing in widgets, let's just say widgets. I know that's a very technical production total. Yeah, I'm going into geek speak here with production, but you've got all these groups. So now you're touching multiple departments. So how do you go about implementing something? Because you're like, hey, we're just like dying on the vine. Like you said earlier, we have proof of concept. People are buying this stuff, but man, we just can't get it shipped, right? So how do we begin implementing this thing that's going to cross these departments? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're kind of talking about when a process includes multiple people, places, and, things that are happening. So it's like more of I don't want to say asynchronous work, but everybody's kind of doing different things at the same time, and they could affect each piece.
Yes.
So one thing that is always important is there has to be what I call kind of a source of knowledge. So there has to be somebody who is managing and knows kind of all of those things, all of those pieces that go into it, and all of what's happening in each place. So that person, and it's typically an operations person. So having somebody help you coordinate and make sure they understand all of these things so that this person can stay impartial. Because the teams individually and people in those specific departments are experts in those departments, and they will believe, as most of us do, right, when we're in our kind of expertise, that this is a great way and that this is going to be easiest for us. And so the question isn't, making sure you're asking yourself the correct questions as well, right? So the question isn't, how do we make it easier just for my department? The question is, how do we make this the best service for our clients and keep our sanity, right? So it is also incremental kind of communication. So, and always checking in. So having somebody to kind of lead that for all of them, keeping the peace in a way, and making sure that every meeting, right? Every meeting has agendas. Every meeting is productive. The more meetings you have, the less productive they are, the less effective they are, the more checked out the entire company will be. And once that operations person has a good handle, there's great communication facilitated by this person. There's notes taken and decisions made together. There is going to be a process that is inclusive of everyone that can then be documented and reviewed by everyone so that there is a buy-in. So this process includes everyone's buy-in, but it also ensures that we still keep our primary focus, which is that, depending on your core values, it could be that white glove service for clients, or it could be that, speedy delivery or something. It's really important to also consider that, and I'm not very good at this, but you can't always go Roadrunner style. I love the Roadrunner. Don't get me wrong. I adore the Roadrunner. I tend to work. I always say I'm a sprinter, not a marathoner. But when it comes to working with cross-functional teams, and it comes to working with a bunch of different people, and there is a lot of decisions that have to be made that affect more than, just a few. You want to go slower to ease it in.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's just the sheer complexity, the sheer buy-in, everything else. It does become slower even when you don't want it to be slower. Even when you feel like it needs to be done next week, it's like, well, is that reasonable?
And is it sustainable? I mean, like, I would love to get everything done by next week, but like, what does that mean for the future? Right. I do this myself, right? I know I've answered questions because like, I just got to do it. I got to do it. How many times have we been wrong because we're rushing? How many times have we made mistakes and created larger problems for the future because we were like, I can't marathon, I need to sprint?
That's a good point. I mean, it's just because it's almost like when you start working and you say, okay, this works if everything lines up just perfectly and the optimum happens and nothing's late and like there's no errors and there's no hiccups, like we can do this. And like totally not real, totally not reasonable, totally not sustainable, and I'm totally guilty. Like I just own that. Like I try too much to live in an optimal world that doesn't exist.
Oh yeah. And I always plan, but it's never perfect. And even and I'm kind of the same way. Like one of the things that's really important to me is like efficiency and not wasting time. And so I'm like, you know what the most efficient thing is? To have 6 meetings in a row, not take any breaks, and then be done for half the day. But I don't know if you've ever really done that. Let me tell you, I suffer the rest of the day, the next day, the day after. I'm not in my 20s anymore. So, maybe it's that, but there is a load that you're going to take on either way. So you have to determine what load you are able to handle at that point.
Yeah. It's like our humanity gets in the way. Mm-hmm. It just does. And I'm with you. It's like after about 2 or 3 calls, I'm like, whatever happens in the later ones, I don't remember it. Like I'm just done.
You actually need me there because like I wasn't.
I know. Like I don't know what I was doing, but you were talking. It's all good. But yeah, it's tough. We forget that, or we don't. Honestly, I think sometimes we don't want to acknowledge that. It's like, okay, I can't do this many meetings in a row. I can't do this, regardless if I think I should. It's like, man, I gotta go pee. Like I just gotta go to the bathroom and walk around for a few minutes.
I have done, and we're gonna. I'm not gonna lie. I know myself. I'm going to do it again once in a while. I just, I am. So and there have literally been moments in meetings where I'm back to back, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I have to pee really bad. I will pee my pants. And in my head, I'm like, oh my god, if I wore a diaper right now, that would be so efficient. But I was like, no, this is where we draw the line.
But I think that's a beautiful example, though. It's something like, okay, I need to be realistic in my expectations. I need to understand that in whatever system I set up and whatever my processes are, I have to allow for a less than, perfect efficiency.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And it's not only okay, that's just business. It's not like we're not seeking excellence. It's a difference between excellence and perfection, I think.
Yes.
And I think we get those confused.
I agree. I love that. Please elaborate.
As a recovering perfectionist, and my problem was my perfectionism. It wasn't that, some perfectionists, they're like, I'm just going to spend 15 hours fixing this one little thing. And my perfectionism drove me the other way. It's like, oh, I can't be perfect. Therefore, I'm not going to start.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
put myself on the deadlines. So I want to say I'm a recovering perfectionist, but at this point, I don't even know what I'm doing. So I will say to myself, well, like it's due this day. I'm going to put it on my calendar for 2 weeks forward. And all of a sudden, whoops, it moved to the next day. Whoops, the next day, the next day, the next day, the next. And all of a sudden now I'm under this deadline and whatever comes out, comes out. And it's always like I have very high standards and it's never anything like leftover or, last little bit of energy. I always put a lot of effort and work and love into my systems and structure, but I could have actually probably felt better throughout. if I had just started earlier and taken it smaller.
Those are words to live by. Started earlier, taken it smaller. Yeah, it's the baby steps that can make a huge difference. And as somebody guilty of not doing that frequently, often. So before we wrap up, last takeaway that you would like to give to our audience in terms of systems operations, encouragement, challenges, anything you'd like to leave them with?
I would say keep it simple, sexy. Because, like, one thing that people always want to jump to is project management tools, task management tools, automations, like AI, all of these things to streamline and make your systems better. But what ends up happening is you end up losing, I would say, kind of, I don't want to say control, but you end up losing that connection with your business. And you end up doing things probably not in the way that you see yourself in the future. So sometimes, like, I do still use pen and paper to write my to-do list, and I do that a lot for my home stuff, for my shopping list. And it's my system that, I sit down and write every day. Like, my process is writing down, daily or weekly, kind of something that I need, something that needs to get picked up, when I'm going to do it, etc. And, that's just on paper. I've tried using apps. I've tried using my phone notes. I've tried using different things, but none of it sticks. And so instead of trying to use all those things, become, just using my phone and more efficient and not paper and pen. And what is that? That's from the 1930s. Like, I'm going to, just keep it simple for myself and focus on what works and what I can adopt myself based on my habits, my preferences, and who I am.
I love that. Keep it simple, sexy. That's it, right? It's just don't overthink it and don't think it has to be complicated. I love that. So Sonia, if people want to know more about you, more about your business, where do you want them to go?
So I typically hang out on LinkedIn. You can look me up, Sonja Narvaez, or you can listen to my podcast that will be releasing a couple episodes over the next few weeks. And you can find that at wherever you listen to your podcasts. And then you can also check out my website and let me know what you think, because eventually I'm going through a rebrand. So I need to know what else I should add in.
I love it. Yeah, that's great, because feedback's critical. So we're going to drop all of those links in the show notes. Please make sure to connect with Sonia. She's just a wealth of information and just a fantastic resource. And she's just going to make your life better by what she shares and what she knows. So Sonia, this has been a blast.
Yes.
I've learned a ton. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Eric. I've had so much fun today, and I am excited to talk to you again.